Hello and welcome to Spectator TV Australia. I'm your host, online editor Alexandra Marshall, and today we've got a bit of a wild one for you guys who are interested in the social media and Bitcoin conversation, and of course, the general censorship of everything we say. We're joined by Efrat Fenigson, who is the host of You're the Voice. We're going to have a chat to her about digital tyranny. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Look, just tell people what happened to you recently with this crazy under 16 bill that Australia is trialing for the whole world, apparently.
hmm Yeah, so I recently came for a visit in Australia, and when I got there, I accessed my blog as I do. I am a usual writer on my Substack, and I have about 15,000 followers and subscribers on my platform, and I write regularly. So I tried to access my blog to do another blog, and lo and behold, I got this pop-up saying verify your age. You need to prove that you're over 16. Now, I know some people think that I may be young, but I'm turning 46 very soon. So, it's been 30 years since I've been 16. So I said, thanks for the compliment, Substack, but, I'm over 16. And you know this because I've signed up with you like 2 years ago. I've been doing, or 3 years ago, I've been having this Substack. So it's not new. And the fact that I'm in Australia now doesn't need that you need to age verify me. I do not show my papers. This is a principle for me that started during COVID, and I will continue with it until I think the day I die. I'm not going to show my papers just to anyone that asks for it if
Yeah,
there is
that
no good justification for it, right?
when they were putting the whole green tick and red cross up on you to go to the cafe, I think that was the line in the sand for a lot of people.
Exactly. And I was one of them. So, Alexandra, I don't know about you, but my freedom and my privacy are very important to me. So I don't just want to give my identity to anyone. Plus, I come from the Bitcoin community. And so I'm very much aware and in tune with how much my identity matters online, because a lot of scammers are using crypto, which is very different from Bitcoin, to scam people online. But by taking their identities and using them in the wrong ways. And so I am being very careful. I'm very aware for my privacy and for my identity. And also for my rights as a human being. I don't want the state or corporations to overreach my domain and my sovereignty by asking to verify me, authenticate me, and identify me everywhere. It's not the way I want to live. And so I resisted. I didn't do it. I said, okay, in 2 weeks, I'm going to leave Australia. So I'm just going to wait patiently until I leave, and then I'm going to access my blog as usual. And I did that. I mean, in the meanwhile, I did post about it and tagged Substack, but they obviously didn't answer me. And when I, of course not. And when I left Australia, I'm in Bali now. I tried to access my blog again, and the same thing kept happening. They kept asking me for my age verification. They probably at that point, I mean, I could go to any other Substack and just read, but when I tried to log into mine, it would pop up again. So it's as if they flagged my account on their servers to say, this person has to verify their age, otherwise we're not letting her in. So I called it the digital prison. I was locked out of my blog and I couldn't access, and I kept on reporting about it. And also your colleagues at Sky News Australia have also reported about it, which was great. And a lot of people online shared my video, which went viral. So I think Substack have noticed finally, after a lot of social media pressure that we put on them, because I have about 200,000 followers online, so across all my platforms. So I think the pressure worked, because the day after I was released, there was no official message or tweet or anything, but I was unlocked and I could access my blog again. And another thing that I know that has happened during that time, because I have international audience, one of my followers in the US, he told me that he had sent my video to the State Department office in the US, because Substack is an American company, to ask them to explain what has happened. And the US State Department said that they would do it, like that they're going to take care of it. So And I don't know what has worked, whether it's that or the social media pressure or everything together or just luck. So I was
Oh, even
unlocked.
even the timing, because when Elon
Yeah.
Musk introduced the location to the profiles,
Mm.
if you might have seen that around the same time it started saying where you were, people were noticing that if they traveled to another country, their location changed, but it would
Yes.
have a lag of about a week or two where they'd still look like they were in the country they just came from. So there's also this problem where you get locked out for longer than you think you are. But anyone
Yeah,
who's dealt with a social media company for tech support will have PTSD from this
that's right.
experience. And Substack is the most bizarre because there's not a lot of kids congregating on
Oh,
Substack. It is a well,
show me the child that is under 16 that wants to read long form blogs these days.
they are on
They
the
hardly
gaming
want to read
apps,
two
which are
lines.
not, the gaming apps are not being regulated, but the Substack for the writers are. Now, Substack has a whole post about this. I'll put it up on the screen if I can find it again, saying they chose to bring themselves into the Online Safety Act because
That's
obviously
right.
they were cautious. But my question is it about children or is it about politics? And to do that, to answer that question, let's go back to the start. You and I are old enough to remember the days of social media when Silicon Valley was controlled by the left. Every owner of a major social media company was a Democrat, and they had these voluntary community guidelines which they would enforce, and they all revolved around climate change, migration, Islam, COVID later. They were political. Do you think that this censorship started as a political statement?
I'm pretty sure of it, and not because it's just my opinion. That is my opinion, but then when I do my work, I want to verify what I'm checking. And so one of the organizations that I follow up closely is the United Nations. And the United Nations 3 years ago have launched, I mean, they've launched many papers around this topic throughout the years, but one of the documents that they've launched in 2023 ties in the United Nations Agenda 2030 and its implementation to the problem, they call it the problem, that we have today in the world, which is the integrity of information online. And because they're the United Nations and they own the truth and they own the power, then one of the policy documents that they've put out, part of their Agenda 2030, is a document that is calling governments to start being more restrictive on online access and access to information online because of disinformation, misinformation, and hate speech. And around 2023, Antonio Guterres, the head of the United Nations, said, we have to start doing that, clamping down harder on the internet, on access to information, because all of these lies are being spread in all those platforms and we don't have enough control.
The spread of hatred and lies online is causing grave harm to our world.
Yeah, lies. And you can see, and there's a blog post I wrote about that document and about his speech about it, that he blames the unsuccessful achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, which are part of Agenda 2030, to the misinformation, disinformation, and hate speech online. It's not because, they're at fault because they're putting ignorant and crazy policy out there that no one can actually implement in real life, but because of lies that are being told online, this is not working. And they specify 10 out of the 17 sustainable development goals that are being harmed because of those lies that we tell online. And this is their excuse to then push governments to take this seriously and to start enacting the bills. And I think this is also a really good proof for why, from what I'm hearing in Australia, for example, the recent hate speech that passed was a bill that was already on the table in the past. It's as if they had it, and then when they decided to enact it, it passed very quickly, right? There was not enough time for anyone to react
I have it on very good authority that
yeah,
that bill
yeah,
has been drafted since the Morrison era, but
yeah,
specifically
There you go.
since they appointed the envoys, one for Islamophobia and one for anti-Semitism, it is well held
And was that?
suspicion that this was supposed to be part of the culmination of those two projects and those people they hired for that set amount of time, and all the money they spent on it was meant to culminate in this bill, which Labor dug up and dumped on the table because the Liberals foolishly said, we want more laws, we want more censorship. And Labor went, sure, I've got you covered. I've got this.
So
I've
they
got this
already
hidden
had it
for you.
ready. That's, yeah.
The decision to ban social media for under 16s was world-leading legislation. 4.7 million accounts gone.
Yeah, that's the thing. So their bosses, the politicians' bosses, real bosses, the actual real bosses of the politicians are supposed to be the public, but they forgot about that. So they have other bosses, which are the lobbies and the globalists. And because of that, they already have all these policies and bills ready to go. And they're just using the different the different scenarios or events in the different countries in order to, justify using them or enacting them very quickly. So it's no coincidence that the bill was kind of ready and passed so quickly, because they got the guideline from the United Nations already a few years back, telling them, clamp down on this. This is the time that, like, it's emergency time. Lies are being told online. You got to start checking ages and locking people outside of their social media.
Why they're so keen to please the UN is beyond me. But just taking it back to the story of the origin of censorship, because a lot of people, they see a law today and go, oh, that's just a one-off law that was birthed because of a terror incident. They don't realize this is a long procession that has been going on for a while. So we had the community guidelines, and then what happened? Elon Musk bought Twitter. And for the first time, there was one platform where people could say things like, I'm being hurt by your government policy. People are dying because of this policy. This policy is just wrong.
Yeah.
A politician
Yeah.
will put up a post and thousands of citizens would say, I disagree with you. Now, when that happened, that was when we first started seeing domestic censorship policies.
Rise.
Is there an
Yeah.
argument here that you think that the politicians are worried about the power of a public forum existing for their own political policies to survive? Is this a problem for politicians the world over?
Look, we are living in a time, if I'm understanding your question correctly, we're living in a time in which we're reaching a tipping point where the natural state, the organic state of the internet, which is supposed to be decentralized and free, is becoming a real problem for those in power, because they are seeking more and more control over speech, over money, over property, over legislation, etc., etc. And they're seeking that because we're changing the world order right now. We're changing the monetary order right now. So we're in a very specific decade right now where there's a shift in orders, there's a shift in systems, and those people in power are trying so hard to just hang on to the power they already have, where you have a rise of awakening that has started probably in COVID and maybe even before, but around COVID it was it was 9/11 and then COVID, but it's very real right now. And people are holding on to their rights, resisting and fighting for what's theirs. And in an open and free organic system like the internet, when they try to introduce measures that are becoming excessively censoring and controlling and silencing, it doesn't work. And we, the people, we become like water. We find other ways. The kids find other ways. We adults, we find other platforms. There's a whole sector, there's a whole category in technology today called freedom tech. Most people are not even aware of that, for free and open source protocols that are being created. There are developers working on so many different tools and so many different technologies that it's just exciting to see, to preserve our privacy, to preserve free speech, to preserve our ability to access the internet no matter what. And so I think those are two opposing powers that are at play. People that are fighting for freedom, not just in their words and what they're saying, but in actually building those tools that are enabling that. And on the other side, the powers that shouldn't be, that are trying to harder control things that organically and naturally should be free and should be open. So we're living in a very interesting time in that sense.
I don't I don't even think it's just about freedom. I've been thinking about this for a long time and watching the way they behave and the actions these people take. If everyone on the free internet was praising them for being wonderful, we love your migration policy. Thank you so much for protecting us during COVID. You know, we love your climate stuff. You're going to save us from the sun or whatever it is. I don't think we would be seeing censorship inclinations toward the internet if that was the case. I have a feeling it's to do with unpopularity and the divide between what the people in power want to get out of their political power, which is at odds with what the ordinary people are receiving on the ground, which is unsafe cities. Their jobs and houses are being sold to foreigners. Their children have no future. They can't afford to have children. And so there's an angry mob, which you get in every revolution, and there's people trying to put out ideas to fix this or stay in power, and the people are going, no, I still hate you. And then we're getting censorship. Do you think that this is
But I
about
think this is
that
more of
as
the
well?
divide and conquer. What you're explaining here is basically their strategy of divide and conquer. I think it is to do with freedom, because only in a free society and in a free market and a free environment can different ideas rise up. And in every country you will get different flavors, different ideas, different opinions, and different views of people. And it's very easy to like categorize it as it's not the direction or the trajectory that they want you to take. That's why they censor you. But it's essentially, it doesn't matter what view you hold, because at one place they will censor you for I don't know, saying that you don't like Muslims, and in another place they will censor you for not liking Jews. So it really doesn't, there is no logic around this. It's just basically controlling your speech. And in every place they will implement that politics according to the taste du jour, what the people up there said that is correct for you to think today. So it's basically the action of deciding for you, controlling for you what it is you're going to think and what it is you're going to see. And that is also an important part of the algorithms, what it is that you're going to be exposed to, and not just what it is you're going to think. Like, the algorithms are completely shaping what we are thinking today and putting us in boxes and radicalizing us even more. If we have a certain tendency and we show the algorithm in a very small way that we have a tendency to go to a certain direction, it will lead us even in a more extreme way to that direction. So there is a real engine here to deprive you from your freedom of thought, from your freedom of choice, and from your freedom of speech. But it's not just speech. It's a lot bigger than that. There's a whole machine out there, which is the I call it like the combination of the big tech with governments, with globalists. It's like a whole cohort of forces that works together in order to try and just have more control and less organic freedom, freedom of views and freedom of speech and everything.
Well, for the first time in human history, the invention of social media triggered a global, borderless civilizational contest. And so suddenly, all the people of the world were allowed to, talk about ideas and challenge each other without having to go through their government. And this would have led to the strongest ideas winning, and so regimes who were more oppressed, they would learn about freedom, etc. This sort of thing would happen. But what happened instead is the Western civilization, who should be winning this grand debate of civilizations, is silencing their own people and allowing the voices in a lot of third world regimes who love big state, they love all these power, they're rising louder and louder. They can put hate speech online, they can put lies and misinformation up there, but if you challenge it, you're silenced. And so now the global conversation is being shifted. It's even shifted away from the people who invented the internet in the first place.
Yeah. I've seen a graph today in a blog post of my friend, the geopolitical analyst Alex Craner, who just showed this brilliant graph of approximate arrests for online and social media posts, and with a breakdown of different countries and how many arrests they had in the last year. So as you know, UK is up there with 12,000, but you'd be amazed to see the other countries that are on that list that you would think, because you mentioned how the West is like, we would all expect the West to be the one leading the way to a free society, but rather you have countries after the UK, Belarus, Germany. Belarus may not be a surprise, but Germany, number
Can't
3.
Germany just stay out of trouble? Like, just take
Right.
the century off. You know, you've done enough. Just
With
walk
almost
out, sit
4,000
down.
arrests. Yes.
And
And
the French, they need to sit tight as well.
only after that, China. So it's like the West has beaten China. How is that? Like, and then Turkey and Russia and Poland and other places that you may expect, like places like Thailand, places like Syria and Iran, but they have such small numbers compared to UK and Germany, and your head explodes.
We are more likely to be door knocked. Well, I'll be door knocked because I'm in the country for having this conversation than for an Islamic terrorist to be door knocked. They'll be put on a watch list. We'll be in jail. But taking this back to kids, because after they had a good crack at silencing adults, and they had a lot of pushback to this because Elon Musk and Donald Trump in particular is standing behind Elon, daring the EU, come on, come after us. We might just cut our supply to NATO if you keep giving us social media a hard time. So they have decided to change track. Now it's all about child safety. It's easier to sell to parents who maybe haven't been successful in the changing of technology. So parents think, oh yes, the government will save me from my parenting woes. I support this. So what's happening is kids from kindergarten to their second or third year of university have no outside challenging to left-wing politics. They are being trapped in this bubble. Social media was their only exposure. Is this part of what you're talking about of control and limiting freedom? Because these kids are being taught not to read right-wing media. They're being told everything that's not left is misinformation, and now they can't even see their friends online.
Yeah, that's definitely the chosen strategy to introduce this kind of control regime. Age verification is really, in my view, the normalization of identification and digital surveillance, and it's the end of privacy. It gives the state and corporations excessive powers, and it's basically the KYC policy. KYC stands for Know Your Customer. That's the kind of policy that banks have when they question you, when you want to open a bank account or you want to pull money out. They ask you all these questions. It's part of what's called the KYC policy, Know Your Customer. So now we are seeing the KYC of internet access. That's basically what age verification is all about. And it beautifully ties with where we're going with a monetary system, which is a world of a central bank digital currency, CBDCs, because that will make their lives much easier if you're already identified when you logged into a specific internet website. If you click that together with your CBDC account, then it's very easy to just switch on and off things, or decide what kind of quotas you're going to have on things that you do online. So that ties in beautifully. And if I go back, I just went for a second to the monetary part, but if I go back to the age verification, the age verification is basically a good guise to take advantage once again of people's will to be good. Just like in COVID, when everyone wanted to just protect grandma, now everyone wants to protect the kids, right? So they find this excuse that would make you feel better about yourself if you say yes to it, without thinking about the consequences of doing that. And I have a son, a 16-year-old son, and I do need to have some really serious conversations with him as he's growing up and being exposed to a lot of that kind of leftist content that you were talking about, because he was going to a school where he had gender studies, for example, or he had climate change interwoven into his science class. And so as a responsible mother, I would take a look at his textbooks from time to time to just see what kind of education he's being basically fed with. And I didn't like what I was seeing. So I had to sit down and have some conversations with him to explain to him the other side, or why would school teach you one thing when really reality is a little bit different, or you have to be aware of the nuances or the different sides of the story.
You
And
almost have to give your children an exercise, an education in the politicization of the education system and the wider world, just so they can learn science, which is, it's not helpful.
It's not helpful, and it's very hard for the parents when, you know, we live in a world where the economy is so difficult and the financial situation for people is so difficult, and it creates a reality in which they have to work harder for the same money that they would earn 20, 30 years ago. They may have to take a second job. They may have to, you know, become investors all of a sudden and find themselves investing in the stock market or Bitcoin or whatever other things, because they have to, because the situation is so hard. The last thing they have time to do is look at their kids' textbooks or pull them out of school and do homeschooling, right? It's like, so it's really unfair. But if we are not switched on, then we are missing out on a big part of our children's indoctrination and education and upbringing, because the education system today is geared to take them onto a certain lane and turn them into certain people when they grow up. And, you know, your audience is probably a little bit more responsible and switched on and want to be prepared for the future. And so one of the things that we really have to do these days is have serious and difficult conversations with our children, including about surfing the internet, including about porn, unfortunately, including about all those harms and dangers and risks that are out there on the internet when they can be abused by predators that are just waiting there on Snapchat or on Instagram and all those tools. It is real. It's happening, right? Because the children, when they don't know what to do, they may be tempted or used by, you know, just taking advantage of their hormones and everything and just like do stuff that is really risky for them.
It's not much different from the don't take candy from strangers discussion you have to have with the
Absolutely.
internet. I don't know why people treat the internet like it's some kind of strange thing. Every generation has to have a chat. At least we're not having chats with our kids about a war that we're all going to fight and you can't go in the street because another country is invading. Like the overbearing fear that is being put out is so out of touch with the history of humankind. It's insane. But you know what? The government could have helped our kids. Our kids needed help when their curriculum was being completely subverted by untrue politics. They needed help because they can't go on their streets anymore because their streets are unsafe because of foreign immigration policies. They need help because they can't even go to the beach without, you know, becoming victims of Islamic terror attacks. They needed help in so many different ways, and yet the government was never interested in child safety until they became interested in child control. And I find that very
Exactly. Or it's not even child control, it's adult control. It's just a way to sneak it in, right? We care about your children, so we block them out of social media. But guess what? You're blocked too, just like happened to me, right? So
how did that happen? Total accident. Couldn't foresee that coming. But look, we're almost out of time. I do want to promote this. You have an event coming up, which is Women of Bitcoin Summit, which is March the 4th to the 5th. Now, Bitcoin, and I don't know much about it. I'm sorry. Don't come at me in the comments. I'm trying. It has a reputation for being tied intrinsically to freedom. Now, Bitcoin has a few ceilings ahead of it, a few technical problems that it'll have to sort out, which I won't go into here. Is Bitcoin going to be a future currency that will weigh itself against our other fiat currencies? Or is it going to come under threat from what the central banks are up to?
Well, it's already under threat. It's under threat from the first day it came into existence in 2009. And it had ongoing attacks, and especially narrative attacks, and what we call in the community FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, kind of mind control attacks to make people think that Bitcoin is dangerous, that it's used by criminals, that it's bad for the environment, you name it. Like every Every narrative under the sun has been thrown at it. But the important facts to know about this thing called Bitcoin, which is, yes, as you said, it's a currency, it's a medium of exchange, but it's also a wonderful store of value. It's like what we call the digital gold. There are a few facts that no one can take away from it, and it doesn't matter how many times they try to attack it. It's permissionless, meaning that you don't need permission from anyone to use it, and it doesn't have any third party between you and the other peer that you want to use it with, which makes it completely censorship resistant, makes it it cannot be stopped. It is global, so you and I, you now in another country and me sitting here, can exchange Bitcoin within milliseconds between us without no bank, no government, no one between us. And it doesn't even have to be in a way that is identified.
You can't be debanked, basically. Like what happened to
You
Nigel Farage?
cannot be debanked. You take self-custody of your own Bitcoin, you hold it in your own custody and not in a third-party custody, and you are the only one that can sign your own transactions and decide what happens with your Bitcoin, and you can access it at any given moment, and anyone could get it. Even in countries where people don't have access to bank accounts, they can open a Bitcoin account by having a wallet. That's all they need. So there is a very low barrier of entrance, basically no barrier of entrance, and it continues working whether governments want it or not, whether they ban it or they don't ban it, whether they regulate it or don't regulate it, it doesn't matter. It keeps working. So there are some really beautiful attributes to this technology called Bitcoin, which is completely free and open source, and anyone can view the code of that computer program, basically. And it's also up there on the internet, so it's real like magic internet money that anyone can use from anywhere. And it's a protocol. The beautiful thing about it, that the only thing that you can really compare to Bitcoin is the TCP/IP protocol, which is the technological protocol that the internet relies on, which is a decentralized protocol to write how the internet works. And a protocol is a suite of technologies. It's not just one technology. It is layers, many different layers of technology. So Bitcoin is not just like one thing. It has many layers in the protocol. And in order to really take it on, you have to compromise the whole thing, which is really not possible.
Do you think it's going to be normalized? I mean, a lot of people, they know about Bitcoin. They sort of have they've dismissed it. Do you see this becoming like social media did, a much bigger force in the world as a new generations grow up who are more comfortable with it?
100%. 100%. I know it because I've been traveling all around the world the past 3 years. I'm a digital nomad, so I visited so many different countries and communities that are actually using Bitcoin as a daily medium of exchange. They use it for paying for stuff. They use it to store their value. They use it for as a unit of account to measure things. So it really is out there already, and I've seen it working in real life, and I have no doubt that it's going to be the next monetary system of the world. And there is acceptance for it, to your question. A lot of countries are understanding that it cannot be stopped. So the only thing they can do is to embrace it. And that's why you're seeing a lot of financial institutions, a lot of governments, a lot of banks starting to adopt it, starting to write legislation that will work with it. Australia is quite behind, I must say, when it comes to the...
Our politicians can't even open their own Twitter account, okay? They're not going to hop on the Bitcoin bandwagon when they think the internet begins and ends at their paper that they read in the morning. Like, give me a break.
10 years ago, there was a Senate hearing in Australia that was run by some of your Senates, and they invited one of the experts back then of Bitcoin, and he gave a fascinating presentation to the senators that participated, but they didn't adopt it. But, however, you do have a few good politicians in Australia that are looking into it. People like John Rudick in the Libertarian Party. Alex Antic told me that he's interested, but also... Malcolm Roberts is definitely, I mean, the One Nation Party, especially there's a guy called Tyler Green in One Nation who is a big advocate of Bitcoin. And I know the Libertarians have put together a white paper for it as well. So I have hope that Australia will catch on. But that's the beauty. You don't need the legislation.
You've named the Freedom Parties and also One Nation, which has a lot of very young advisors who are in touch. The Liberals, the Greens, the Labor, they're all in a different generation. Of course, except for Alex Antic. Everything I say always comes with an except Alex Antic. You know this if you're watching Alex. But this is
He
a
was just on
generational
my
problem.
podcast and he's really great. He's really awesome. But the beautiful thing is that you have in Australia 3 regulated exchanges already called Bitaroo, Hard Rock, and there's a third one which I forget the name. And you can, Hard Block, not Hard Rock, Hard Block. And you can just go on Google, find them, and you can purchase Bitcoin, and it's legal. It's not like it's illegal. It's just that, the legislation is not there to follow, but you can buy Bitcoin, you can hold Bitcoin, you can pay with Bitcoin. There's even a pub in Melbourne that I paid with Bitcoin for my beer when I went there. It exists. So it's early days in most of the Western world, but you'd be surprised that in the global South and in Africa, people use it already on a daily basis in so many different countries. There's a great website and app called the BTC Map that you can go in and just see all the different nodes around the world of businesses and merchants that are using Bitcoin. And you'll just be surprised. Thousands of merchants are already accepting Bitcoin. And I'll just give one last example. In the US recently, there's a company called, I blank on the name. It's Jack Dorsey company that's doing the point of sale machines, that when you accept payments from people in stores, they switched on the possibility to accept Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. So when people come to pay on their point of sale, any cafe, any business that uses their point of sale machine, they can either give the credit card or Bitcoin, and they get it immediately, and they can choose whether the business can choose whether they want to keep it in their reserve or they want to transfer it into US dollar or fiat, whatever it is. And there are 4 million merchants in the US that are under this system of, Jack Dorsey's company. I'm sorry that I'm blanking out on the name.
I'll find it and put it on the
Square.
screen.
I think it's called Square. Yeah. So Square enabled it, and 4 million merchants are now open to accept Bitcoin as a method of payment, and many of them are doing that. So it's really pacing ahead. And I think we're going to see really significant changes in adoption by the end of this decade. And I think the road's going to fork for people who will be led to the CBDC route without choosing anything else and without knowing anything else about money, and people who will actively choose to go on Bitcoin, because the world is becoming more and more digital to our conversation. And yes, my women event is free, so anyone can join basically, but any woman can join. We already have 800 women from around the world that signed up, from Africa, from Brazil, from everywhere, from the US, from Europe. And we have 28 female speakers that are coming to educate for free. And we just want to make this accessible for women who oftentimes think, I don't understand anything about money, and I leave that to my husband or my dad or, all these things. And we just want to empower women to be more educated about money and about Bitcoin. And we really believe that could help. So yeah, join us. It's called Women of Bitcoin Summit. You can just Google it.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us as well that we're always just one blackout away from the Stone Age. Once cash is gone. Look, it was absolutely wonderful to talk to you. I'm sure all the human stories about Bitcoin are what will start to educate people who aren't as interested in tech stuff. There's a lot of people who see tech and just switch off. They see AI,
Absolutely.
They don't read it. They're not interested. It doesn't affect them. It's like too many generations removed from what they know. But when they start hearing about how these technologies work, I think they'll eventually adapt. Most people have adapted to social media. So I do think you're right, and it will get there in the end. But look, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spectator TV.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.